JLF's Brave New World welcomes you back to our second session today. Those of you who missed our earlier session on Chapel Sands, My Mother, and Other Missing Persons, Laura Cumming in conversation with William Dalrymple, and all of the other fabulous sessions featuring our wonderful list of speakers, including Gloria Steinem, Supriya Gandhi, Elizabeth Gilbert, Margaret Atwood. You can catch them on our Facebook page, JLF Litfest, or on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. Our official radio partner is Red FM, Bajate Raho. Our next session is The Far Field, Madhuri Vijay in conversation with Mita Kapur. Madhuri Vijay's award-winning debut novel charts a journey of discovery from Bangalore to the distant and conflicted landscapes of Kashmir. In conversation with Mita Kapur, she speaks of the craft of fiction and shares her inspirations and learnings while writing her first book. Madhuri Vijay's first novel, The Far Field, won numerous awards, including the 2019 JCB Prize for Literature, the Tata Literature Live First Book Award, and the Crossword Book Award, and was a finalist for the DSC Prize for South Asian Literature. Mita Kapur is the founder and CEO of CIE, India's leading literary consultancy. Her first book, The F Word, is a food book, memoir, and travelogue. She has edited Chilies and Porridge, Writing Food, an anthology of essays on food. Please do remember to comment and ask questions by typing it in the comment section below. Do also follow our handles JLF Litfest on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get notified on the upcoming sessions. In case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues, hasn't happened recently, fingers crossed, you can find us on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. And of course, if we drop off, just hang in there and we'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, The Far Field, Madhuri Vijay in conversation with Mita Kapur.
Hi, Madhuri. It's so good to have a chance to converse with you. And I'd like to thank the Jaipur Literature Festival for the Brave New World series, which is indeed, I think, the best thing to have happened to the world of literature these days. And it's so good to have you finally with us. So for everyone who's watching, Madhuri Vijay's confident debut novel deals with loss of family, of home, of innocence. Its Shalini's story is a confession, a cry against injustice, a way of remembering, but ultimately, as she and her readers know, it will make no difference in the end. But here's Madhuri Vijay for you and her debut novel, The Far Field, which has a breathless list of awards. I'll just name a few. That's the 2019 JCB Prize for Literature, the 2019 Tata Lit Life First Book Award, the 2019 Crossword Book Award for Fiction. She was also a finalist for 2019 DSC Prize for South Asian Literature and the 2020 Mathrubhumi Book of the Year. And then she's been longlisted for various others. I'm not going to get into that. I really want to get into the book itself. Madhuri, why the title The Far Field? I know it's based on a poem, but would you tell our readers and listeners?
Absolutely. But first, Mita, it's absolutely a pleasure to talk to you and to have been invited to speak for JLF Brave New World. I've wanted to attend JLF, the in-person version. This is not quite the same thing, but I'm very excited to be here. The Far Field is well, as you know, it's the title of the Theodore Roethke poem, which I love. But more than that, it's a phrase I love because it seems to connote so many different things. It connotes distance, obviously. You travel to a far field, but you can also travel far afield, which is what Shalini does in the book. And the word field itself can be literal. It is a large grassy patch, but it's also your field of expertise, your field of comfort. It can be so many things. And the multiplicity of this phrase, its chameleon nature, was what I really loved about it. Also, I just like to say it, the far field. It sounded good, sounded right, and that's why I picked it.
Right. At the heart of the book is about Shalini and her mother. That is my interpretation. But it's her relationship with her father that intrigues me. She's consumed on one side by her larger than life mother, but her father's waiting in the wings, waiting to be seen. What kind of trajectory, what kind of relationship did you have in mind when you were writing this?
Honestly, I, like Shalini, was very consumed with Shalini's mother. She is, as you say, a larger than life character. She is somebody who takes up a lot of air, takes up a lot of space, which is a trait you typically associate with male characters, and not so much with female characters. Uh, and I wanted her to be a large, commanding figure in the book and in Shalini's life. And so I was so consumed with her memories of her mother shifting moods, that it would be a surprise for me now and then to remember that there was another parent in the household. And so I, had to write about her father. And as I wrote about her father, I was surprised to discover how tenderly I felt towards him and how much he softened over the course of the book. Because he begins the book as, well, kind of a stereotypical figure of a patriarch. He's very confident in his opinions. He's the breadwinner, with all the sort of assumed privileges the breadwinner, takes for himself. But by the end of the book, he's much more broken, and he's much softer, and he's much less certain of himself. He's much less certain of the world. And I truly felt an affection for him by the end that I think is echoed in the way Shalini feels. That surprised me. So the answer was that I didn't have a trajectory in mind. His character developed very organically over the course of the book. And I think it does happen when you have one parent who is commanding, and who muscles into every scene, every family scene. You have the other parent who has to find a zone for themselves, a kind of personality for themselves. They have to carve it out. There's a beautiful novella that I read probably a decade ago, by Jane Smiley, the American author. At least she's American. Called The Age of Grief. The Age of Grief. And it's about a child, told from the perspective of a father, about a child who prefers her mother. And I just think it was a very beautiful novella. So I'm always interested in those kinds of relationships. And this one came as kind of a surprise to me, but I was very glad that I had him there right at the end to kind of save her from the ruin of what she had accomplished.
Right, because it's a compelling page turner. And there's no way that I wanted to leave it at any point. And I wanted to continue reading and finish the book in one go, but obviously that can't happen, given that so many things have to be done. There was this all-pervasive sadness. Like my heart was constantly heavy. In spite of your writing being so sophisticated, brilliant, I would say, for a debut novel, you came across as someone who's written a few. The confidence within the writing and the refreshing honesty. So there was lots of nuances to the writing. I could go on with that. But your book is also about outsiders like Shalini and Bashir Ahmed. They are geographical outsiders, of course, but Shalini's mother is also an outsider within the worlds that Shalini and Bashir actually inhabit. So, what fuels this sense of alienation which is running through the book?
I don't know what fuels it. I suppose I would need some therapy for that. I'm sure there's some sense that I have always had of being an outsider in the various settings that I have inhabited. I've spent a lot of time away from the place that I grew up in, and a lot of the book was written in places. I was always aware of the nature of being an outsider, the adjustments you have to make, the performance that you put on, and the promise of it, the allure. There is being an outsider, I think sometimes is seen as a kind of unenviable position to be in. You are not privy to the secrets of the place. You are not taken into people's confidences. But on the other hand, there's something incredibly alluring about arriving in a place where nobody knows you and nobody knows the mistakes you've made. And you can start again, and you can be clean, and you can be pure in a way. But of course, the flip side to that is, to maintain that sense of cleanness and pureness, you always have to be an outsider, which means you always have to leave and go somewhere else. And there is some of that in Shalini, I think. When she is in Kishtwar, she has left behind many broken relationships, many sullied relationships. But in Kishtwar, she can start again. But then in Kishtwar, things start to get complicated and sullied, and she makes mistakes and she says the wrong thing. And so there is something alluring or sexy about leaving and going and doing it again, leaving those mistakes behind. So I think I am interested in that kind of dynamic, where people not only are outsiders who want to be on the inside, but then when they get to the inside, so to speak, they immediately run away.
While there is this whole outsiders are viewed with suspicion, they also invite people confiding in them. Like in the case of the far field, there was Zoya, there was Amina, even Riaz finally opened up to Shalini. I mean, there was a shared emotional connect there, because he just had someone to talk to, someone who could relate to his whole being. How does telling this story from the perspective of an outsider differ? Because you have taken people inside this world. So you are an insider in the true sense. So how did you balance this out?
Well, I do think that the novel as a form is necessarily the form of an outsider. Even if you are writing a novel about a very tight-knit community and you are telling the story from the perspective of somebody who has been in that community, has never known anything other than that community, who is the quintessential insider, the very act of writing a novel, at least in the first person, especially in the first person, puts that narrator on the outside, slightly on the outside. Because the very act of stepping back and saying, let me tell you about this, requires you to look at the other people in your life, or in, that you're telling the story about, to assess them, to shape them, to move them around, and to look at yourself. And so that itself is an act of stepping outside. So I cannot think of a novel that is told from an insider's perspective. So I don't think there was, for me, that much of a difference between being quote unquote an insider and an outsider. Of course, Shalini is the ultimate outsider because she misinterprets so much of what she sees. But also, you talked about Riaz and the rest of them confiding in her. Simply because she is so far removed from their reality, simply because she has arrived there seemingly with no past, no history, she doesn't tell anybody anything about herself. She is kind of a blank slate. And there is something tempting about confiding in somebody with whom you have no history. It's why people sit in a bar and tell their deepest secrets to somebody they never know. It is people want to tell stories about themselves, and who better than someone who has no connection with you? And I think she serves that purpose for a lot of people. But the tension between inside and outside is certainly something I was thinking about and that I wanted to play with.
Right. I'm just going to quote a line from the book which says, a handful of minor secrets to pave the way for the final one. The book is full of secrets, and Shalini unwillingly becomes the holder of them all, practically. Is that what prompts her confession, the knowledge that she can no longer live with it? Is it absolution, catharsis, closure? What did Shalini seek on her journey? And what does she hope to get from telling her story?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, and I don't think she knows. There's something noble, even though she would she would reject the word, about telling what you did, even when you are not under trial, and you could reach the end of your life never being under trial. What does it count for? I don't think it counts for very much. It's sort of a gesture of useless nobility. But I think she feels it is all she has. That, no matter what she says or doesn't say, what she has done is what she has done. What has happened is what has happened, and so on until the end of time. And so the telling of it will fix nothing. But it is at least an attempt to make a gesture towards self, I want to say self-exposure, but that's not even right. Towards the beauty of unattainable justice. I really don't know. But you're right. No matter what she says, she will face no consequences. So I think it's twice as important that she is absolutely honest and brutal with her about her role in what happened.
Right. So there's another line which says, why couldn't such a thing be alive? I wondered suddenly, why couldn't it be mine? This sentence somehow becomes very central to the book, at least for a reader. And it seems that Shalini is looking for a place to belong to. Was that a part of the search while you were writing the novel? The sense of belonging, a sense of home? Because identity becomes nuanced with something like that. So was it something that you were thinking of?
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right that that is in some way the core of the novel. Um, from the minute she leaves her home, she's looking for another family to belong to. And she keeps inserting herself into various scenarios, trying to see if it'll fit her, trying to see if this one will look right or if she looks right in this, inside this family. Um, and it becomes for her a kind of an obsession, I think, or kind of a tick, a habit, or a desire that she begins to indulge in past a point where it makes sense and past a point where it actually starts to have effects on other people's lives. You know, it's fantasy gone wild. It's fantasy allowed to become a little more than fantasy, a little more than fantasy, and then, you know, people are really being wounded and hurt. uh, but yes, that is essentially, that is it. It's sort of a banal truth in the end. It's just, you know, everything happens because, you know, she just wants somewhere to belong to, which is I don't know, it makes it even more damning, you know, what she does. um, but yes, yeah, that was certainly what I was thinking about.
Was it daunting to write about Jammu and Kashmir, a place which is already fraught with history, especially when you're not from there? Because, as Shalini says, this country, already ancient when I was born in 1982, has changed every instant I have been alive. And titanic events have ripped it apart year after year, each time rearranging it along slightly different seams, which somehow uncannily seems pretty relevant to what we are going through right now. But coming back to how daunting was it to write about Kashmir?
It was very daunting. um, it's not um, it's not something I undertook lightly, and I by no means have make any claim to have gotten things right. um, I tried to write about it, about the people, um, with the same kind of care and respect that I wrote all the characters, and um, hoped that my level of skill was equal to my intentions. But I make no claims to be any kind of expert. So, you know, I'm sure that um, if people take issue with it, then they have very, very good grounds to.
Um, Even the theme of cowardice that is running through the book. Sometimes inaction is mistaken for cowardice. And sometimes in the book, that's exactly what happens. Inaction gets mistaken for cowardice. With all that's happening right now in the world, do you think art, and specifically writing, can help us deal with our inaction, or maybe even our lack of confronting issues head on, because that tantamounts to cowardice. But what role does writing play in this kind of curve, according to you?
Yeah, it's a question I think pretty much anybody who's writing or thinking of writing is asking themselves, or making any kind of art. You know, I know that there is a popular school of thought that says art, you know, improves us as human beings. It develops empathy, and I do believe that. Um, but I also am very wary of reducing art to a sociological tool that is supposed to achieve A, B, and C goals, that is supposed to, uh, you know, make us realize truths or shine a light on certain issues, and and these are phrases I see often associated with books and movies and paintings and so on and so forth. And while I do think that people's lives and minds can profoundly be changed by art, I think there is a danger in artists, even in the most dire of circumstances, allowing themselves not to respond to the world, because artists always respond to the world, but to make a direct correlation between what they are making and the effect they want it to have in the world. Because I think that is a dishonest way to make art, to write a book. Because I think the only thing to do in these circumstances that we live in, but also in any circumstances, is to be as mercilessly honest with yourself as you can, and then let it do what it'll do. And it'll do something, I think, if you have been honest. But to decide in advance that you are going to write a book that forces people to confront so and so truth, there's something, well, it's limiting, because you may do that, you may do it, but that's all you'll do. But if you write something, and I'm not saying that I'm doing this or that I have done this, but this is what I aspire to. This is what I want to do more badly than I want to do anything else in my life. If you write something that is purely as close to your vision, your outlook on the world as possible, or some kind of aesthetic some sort of aesthetic goal that you have, and you put that out into the world, you may in fact shine a light on ABC, but you may also do so much more. And that is the thing that I think art and artists should be aspiring to, even in the middle of tragedy, even in the middle of, maybe especially in the middle of catastrophe. But I hated to be reduced to a utilitarian tool, because art has meant so much more to me than that, and the effect that it has is so profound, and so it's beyond use, and so that is, I want to try to stay true to that as much as I can. It's a very long-winded answer to your question, which I probably didn't answer in the end, but
no, that's take away from that. But then one also gets a sense that you yourself are grappling with the way ahead. So what is the way ahead for you? Like, what are you working on something right now? Is that too private a question? Because
no, I'm definitely working on something. Yes, I'm working on another novel. And it's at the stage where it's very exciting, because I haven't actually forced myself to confront all the gaping holes and the inconsistencies and the implausible parts of it. So right now it's perfect and it's whole, and it will no doubt change the world.
Okay, right. Well, that's
that was a joke.
Yeah. Well, we are actually looking at things that will change the world, like frantically, and how right now. In your book, also made me think of the classic. It's like Tagore's Kabuliwala. It made me think of The God of Small Things. It made me think of Ghosh's The Shadow Lines. But your prose, even if it's restrained, it's rich, is all your own. So, what are your influences? What is, I mean, I will obviously sound very, very cliched right now, but since you made such a huge impact with just one book, I'm sure that plenty readers and listeners out there and viewers who are wondering what is it that inspires you, pushes you, what what puts you in this space?
In terms of authors that I've read, or
Both,
in general?
both, both.
I mean, as far as authors go, the list is endless. I sometimes think I'm influenced both by the books I love and also by the books I hate, because I mean both are educational and both have given me a chance to articulate my philosophy of language or my preferences aesthetically for for prose. And to list them, I mean, I can try. Alice Munro and J.M. Coetzee and Michael Ondaatje and Elsa Morante and James Baldwin. It just goes on and on and on. And as for the rest of it, I mean, is the question what impels me to write?
Yes, of course.
Honestly, I can say that I don't know. And I think that's a question I'll probably be asking myself for the rest of my life, because it seems a very illogical thing to do. It's not even that it gives me, unmitigated pleasure, because often it isn't pleasure, as I'm sure you know, and it's often quite torturous, or unfulfilling, or frustrating in many ways. But I seem to be the kind of person who thinks in language and thinks in scene and thinks in dialogue. And that is how I organize the word. That is how I make sense of the word. And I'm sure many, many fiction writers have said precisely this. It is my default way of coming to terms with the shapelessness of our lives. So I don't know if that's so much an impulse as it is a fault of personality. But I do know that I feel as though I don't really have a choice. That is just simply what I want to do. Also, I'm not very good at anything else, so I
Come on,
better stick with this for as long as I can.
it's been very
Really,
great.
yeah.
Uh, you have a little baby, and motherhood can be very, very demanding. I mean, I'm just understating it.
Yes, it can be. I'm discovering.
Yes, and you're still managing to write, uh, which is amazing. How do you feel about all the awards that have just come in? Because a lot of writers have this belief that, awards really, really help. Yes, of course they help. But this was your debut book. Were you expecting anything like that, or did it just like happened like a whirlwind for you?
I wasn't expecting anything. I don't think anybody does. It's it. I mean, I wasn't even sure for a long time. I didn't think the book would get published. So I was quite resigned to that. And then HarperCollins picked it up, and they published it. And I thought that I was on top of the world because of that. So the rest of it was gravy. It was just an absolute boon. I mean, I couldn't have imagined um, such a thing, and I'm still slightly in disbelief about all of it. I mean, none of it seems real. So, um, but I'm so flattered, and I'm so happy about all of it. And I did it. You can't take something like this for granted, you know. So I just I'm very grateful.
Well, I think we've been as the JCB Prize. I think we've all been very thrilled with the book, and all of us have enjoyed reading it. Um, I just want to go back to Bashir. Somehow, I'm sorry, I'm taking the curve of the conversation back because I was very, very intrigued with his character and the kind of bond that they shared. The Shalini's mother and Bashir. That was like a psychological exercise, wasn't it?
How do you mean?
It was just there were so many things that were unspoken and yet understood, right? And it leaves the reader questioning what's happening. Like you actually make the reader work hard, by the way, you know. So
Good.
what kind of made you kind of create that kind of bond between them?
Um, well, it sort of it happened because when I started writing the first scene, there was so much that was under the surface um, that the scene itself started sort of crackling with electricity. So I thought, okay, this is right. And then on top of that, it's being narrated by a child, adult's version of a child's perspective, right? Because Shalini is at the beginning a child, and children are naturally apt to imbue scenes that they witness with a sort of drama, because they're children. Nothing is banal to them, and so she gives it even more of attention than it might have otherwise had. Um, so that narrative strategy worked well in the first scene, and as it went along, I realized that uh, what Shalini's mother was lacking all along in her life was someone um, who was like her, a little unpredictable, and who could sort of match her, gesture for gesture, mood for mood, who could disappear one day and be there the next, who could be eccentric and mysterious and unknowable like her. It would be a disaster as a real relationship, but as what they had, which was this uncategorizable friendship, let's call it, it worked. Um, and I found it interesting, so I kept going.
That's fascinating. I think we've come to the end of our time. Madhuri, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for being with us, and thanks JLF, the team at JLF, for handling all of this so smoothly.
Thank you so much, Mita. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And yes, thank you to JLF as well for organizing this.
Thank you, Madhuri. Thank you, Mita. No wonder the book has won such a slew of awards. Absolutely amazing. And I think everybody needs to go out and grab it now that we're very nearly at the end of lockdown. Thank you all for watching. And we're so sorry we couldn't take any questions today because we just overextended the time. We thank our official radio partners, Red FM, Bajate Raho. Please do remember to log in tomorrow, Sunday, the 31st of May, for our next set of exciting sessions: Food, Memory and Culture, Asma Khan in conversation with Rakshanda Jaleel. Food is an intangible trigger of feelings and emotion. Celebrity chef and restaurateur Asma Khan, alongside writer and translator Rakshanda Jalil, speaks movingly of the bonds of food and memory, friendship and community across cultures and continents, and in the special place they call home. This will be at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 3 p.m. British Summer Time, and 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The second session is the economics of COVID. Zeni Minton Bedos in conversation with Mihir Sharma. Zeni Minton, editor in chief of The Economist, speaks to senior fellow of the Observer Research Foundation, Mihir Sharma, on the current economic scenario and the fast changing world around us. Join us for a session on how the world must find its feet on the ground in a post COVID scenario. This will be at 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And now, from the Jaipur Music Stage archives, we present Swanand Kirkire and Ankur Tiwari in concert. Swanand Kirkire is a lyricist, actor, playback singer, scriptwriter, and director for Hindi television, films, and theatre. He has written songs for more than 50 films and is a two-time winner of the National Film for Best Lyrics. He received his first National Film Award for the song Bande Mein Tha Dam Bande Matram from the film Lage Raho Munna Bhai, and the second for Bheti Hawa Se Tha Wah from Three Idiots. Ankur Tiwari is a storyteller and has been a singer-songwriter with the popular independent band Ankur and the Ghalat Family since 2009. His work as music supervisor on the popular soundtrack for Soa Akhtar's Gully Boy was greatly appreciated. Here's an extract from the performance. Enjoy the evening. See you back tomorrow.
देखने चला एक सपना बावरा मन देखने चला एक सपना बावरा मन देखने चला एक सपना बावरे से मन की देखो बावरी है बातें बावरी सी धड़कने है बावरी है बातें बावरी सी करवटों से दुनिया दूर भागे बावरे से नैन चाहे बावरे स्वरूपों से बावरे नजारों को तकना बावरा देखने चला एक सपना बावरे से इस जहां में बावरा एक साथ हो इस दयानी भीड़ में बस हाथों में तेरा हाथ हो बावरी सी धुन हो कोई बावरा एक राग हो बावरी सी धुन हो कोई बावरा एक राग हो बावरे से पैसा है बावरे तरानों के बावरे से बोलते थिरकना बावरा मन देखने चला एक सपना बावरा मन देखने चला एक सपना बावरे से हो अंधेरा बावरी खामोशियाँ घर भरा की लौह हम बावरी मधुहोशियाँ बावराई का चाहे हरे हरे दिन बताए बावराई का चाहे हरे हरे दिन बताए बावरे जब के सरकना सब लोगों को आना पड़ेगा more time बावरा बावरा देखने चलाए